Hey everyone, Pastor George here, and today is Mailbag Thursday, and today we have a question from Bailey. And she asks, I have a Jesus question for you, maybe for Mailbag Friday. Bailey, it's Mailbag Thursday. Come on. How come after Jesus performed a miracle on a person, sometimes he would tell the person to go out and tell everyone, whereas other times he would instruct them not to? Uh, Good question. Well, actually, the first point there's it depends what you mean by go out and tell them to. A lot of the times he says go out and give glory to God and things like that. And more often in the New Testament, Jesus tells people not to say anything. And I thought of this story from Mark. It's a common thing in all the Gospels, but especially in the Gospel of Mark, you kind of have a reoccurring thing of it. And so I'm just going to read a story that a lot of people know. And this is the healing of a blind man. When they came to Bethsaida, and some people brought him a blind man and begged him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. And when he had spit on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked him, Do you see anything? And he looked up and said, I see people, but they're like trees walking. Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he opened his eyes, and his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. And he sent him to home, saying, Do not even enter the village. So you have Jesus saying to this guy, don't even enter the village, right? Don't even go to where other people are going to be. And Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way, he asked his disciples, Who do people say that I am? And they told him, John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, and others one of the prophets. And he asked them, But who do you say that I am? Peter answered him, You are the Christ. And he strictly charged them to tell no one about him. Right? So you have this idea of Jesus saying, even when people know who he is, of saying, no, don't tell anyone. And this can be kind of weird, right? It's something that you think would be something you should say about people and things like this. And you'll actually see that Jesus always kind of uses, until really the crucifixion, until the very end, he uses coded language to refer to who he is, and he doesn't just come out right and say it. And even sometimes, in the end, he still just uses allusions and things like that. And so, why would Jesus instruct people not to tell him who he is? Right? Why would they? Why would he do that? Well, I had a question like this, and this is actually something scholars puzzle about in the outside biblical studies world, because there's this whole idea in scholarly studies of the Messianic secret. And there are all different ways of interpreting it, but it's this idea that the Messiah is secret, or at least in these Gospels, that Jesus keeps himself a secret as the Messiah. And I didn't really know how to interpret all of these things because there really isn't a consensus. But actually, the thing that I found most compelling is archaeological evidence of other things and what the expectations were of the Messiah. And I think this is what makes sense. And this was brought to my attention by a professor at Princeton, then professor at Princeton, Dr. Charlesworth. And he pointed out that in that time, it was the expectation and the belief that the Messiah would not claim that title for themselves, right? It would be something that is evident to people that this is who the Messiah is, which is why one of the first things that people would do when someone declared themselves the Messiah, right? A lot of people would just get killed for that, right? To test them or to see if anything stopped them from being killed. It was a good way of testing the spirits in a very final way to see if who this person was claiming to be was correct, if they really were the Messiah. And so Jesus comes in person and alludes to who he is, and even though he performs these miracles and does other things that shows that he's the Messiah, he actually doesn't claim that title for himself until the time is right, because he's fulfilling the expectations that are expected of the Messiah, right? In some ways. So that is why Jesus doesn't charges people to go out there and not tell anyone who he is, or not to tell people, right? He usually, if he does send people out, he tells them about giving glory to God or something like that, right? To try and distance himself from these things. And even when he's brought before Pontius Pilate, right? Pontius Pilate says, they say you're the Son of God or whatever, and he says, you say so, right? He says stuff like that to try and get around it. So, yeah, that's a good question, Bailey, and the answer is kind of complicated. but the general feeling is that it's to keep societal and messianic expectations and to increase his ministry until the time is right for him to do what he needs to do, dying on the cross for us. So, good question. I will see all of you guys on Sunday and next week for more Theologs. Peace out.